Não deixa de ser irónico. Durante anos, nós mulheres adiámos a maternidade para o mais tarde possível. Agora que a ciência permite esse milagre, por causa do aumento brutal da população e da esperança média de vida, são-nos impostas fortes restrições à maternidade. São os pesos e contrapesos da vida. Chamo-me Lilás, tenho 62 anos e em breve vai nascer o Benjamin.
If our grandparents 100 years ago, let's say, could see us today with their understanding of the world, how would they view us? They would view us as wizards, as sorcerers. Now, our grandkids in 2100, how will we view them? We will view them as Greek gods. But the problem is, will they have the wisdom of Solomon to go with it? That is the question.
It is likely that the greatest transition in history...
It's likely that the greatest transition in history will take place over the next 60 years. It is likely that by 2077, we will look back on sedentism, the emergence of agriculture and the Industrial Revolution as moderate transitions. To what extent can the course of history change the nature of the human condition?
If there was no change, ever, we would still be some slime in the ocean. It is because of the changes that we are able to be who we are today. And there'll be changes in the future as well. So it's not about the changes. It is about who we are. Whichever way it goes, will the humanity of the human being be preserved or not?
By the time we get to 2077, humans will still want the same things that they want today, but the way they'll be able to express those wants and fulfill those wants is what's going to change.
But the fundamental things do not change and have not changed. The desire to be content has always been the same. We give it different names and we give it different meanings. So for a human being to be a human being, these things will be there. The need for joy, the need for kindness, the need for clarity, the need for understanding, the need for love, for comfort will be there. That's what makes us human.
We are heading towards a kind of technology dictatorship. In the future, will the human being be at the top of technology, using it to solve humanity's great problems such as disease, hunger, water scarcity, access to energy and war? Will technology bring us more freedom, allowing us to dedicate ourselves to the highest values of humanity?
We can do incredible innovation. We can create this. We can do math. We can do amazing things. But we sometimes fail to ask the very simple question, who am I? In the answer to that question lies the reason for a human being's quest. In the answer to that question lies the fundamental building blocks of a human being and a human being's humanity.
Lots of technology companies, they think that most problems come down to technology, right? So terrorism, war, government, food, whatever, right? And I think that is an illusion.
O futuro vai ser só suportável se nós desenvolvermos as características humanas. E vamos ter problemas gravíssimos de sobrecarga da sociedade em termos de pessoas e de escassez de alimentos e de lutas fratricidas pela energia ou pela água. E a única maneira de resolver isto não é com mais tecnologia, nem é com mais humanidade.
If you were to say that technologies should make us happy, right, then I would say that technology cannot make us happy in the same way than human things make us happy. Right? Technology is just a tool. And so I think technology companies that aspire to be more than a tool, I would say aspiring for the wrong thing, really. In Japan, you have robot pets, you know? You have dogs that are robots, over 1 million of them. So this is a temptation, right? That we look at machines as friends. And that is what technology companies want. Now, this is all very convenient and very nice and interesting, right? But it's not real.
I think technology is an assistive thing, not a replacement for something. Technology isn't going to bring us love. We need love. And we don't understand this. Technology is going to help us with maybe menial tasks, but we need to feel kindness in our life, and it's not going to bring us that. Technology may be able to allow us to communicate with other people very, very quickly, but we need to communicate with ourselves too. What we are, technology cannot replace, because technology cannot replace us.
So the human is both a resource, it is an archive, it is a memory of what we have been, but it is also the source of what we are in the process of becoming. This is why you can't separate past, present, and future. And what we call the present is both the record of what we used to be and the trace of what we are in the process of becoming. It's a nomadic movement, it's a flow. And it is fantastic to live in an era where things are moving so very fast. I am in love with my times. What an amazing time to see what is happening to science and technology. It's just extraordinary.
The transition to artificial superintelligence or singularity will be unique in history. The surge in the understanding of the brain in the last 20 years has allowed important progress in artificial intelligence. But if on the one hand, unimaginable discoveries are expected in the next 6 decades, on the other hand, the extreme complexity of the human brain raises the question, when will the machine overcome humanity's greatest stronghold?
Without a doubt, we're doing everything we can to build intelligent machines. Will it happen in the 2030s? Who knows? It may take a little longer. What that world looks like is really a question of how quickly it arrives.
We did a survey of some of the world's leading experts in AI and machine learning. And one of the questions we asked was, by which year do you think there is a 50% probability that we will have attained human-level machine intelligence? And the median answer was 2040 or 2050, depending on precisely which group of experts we asked.
If that happened tomorrow, that would be a vast disruption in our society. If it takes us 2 decades to get there, society is going to have 2 decades to get its head around that possibility. and figure out how to coexist with the machines.
Our future in 50 years will be so fundamentally different that it's impossible to imagine. And this is why we need to think about the consequences of technology now.
The power of science in paving human destiny is unquestionable. Just over 100 years ago, the average life expectancy in the West was only 49 years. In the 21st century, it should reach 110. The extension and manipulation of life is a work in progress. Will we be able to reach the power of God in the next 60 years?
We have a long ways to go before we have the power of God. If we had become as gods, we had better get good at it. And that nicely summarizes the challenges today, because we are really tinkering now with the very stuff of what constitutes a human.
Some people ask me the final and greatest question. Is there a moral dimension to technology? Most scientists would say no. Science is amoral. It's a double-edged sword. One side of the sword can cut against people. The other side of the sword can cut against ignorance, poverty, and disease. I disagree. I realize that science has liberated us from ignorance, poverty, disease.
The question is whether technology will eventually become more powerful and maybe negative for us.
Tenho vários chips integrados no meu corpo. Não imagino o que seria viver sem eles, mesmo com as ameaças frequentes dos piratas. Quando me apetece estar sozinha comigo mesma e descansar a mente, faço retiro e desligo.
Privacy is one of those very difficult trade-offs, that the more the networks know about us, the more they can serve us. We're going to have to make some very hard choices, and the price of privacy will be inconvenience.
This is the power of superhumans, right? We're just about to get to the point where we can do a lot of things that were considered to be completely science fiction. We need to decide, if we have so much power, we have a lot of responsibility.
If we are this near the big lever that will determine the fate of galaxies, then that does seem to place on our shoulders a rather terrible responsibility. If these trillions of future beings and generations, if they all depend on the degree to which we get our act together over the next years and decades, then that's quite a wake-up call.
So the decisions that we make today, they will impact this entire development. Right? We cannot stop technology. We cannot go backwards. We cannot put technology back into the bottle. We cannot forbid it.
We need to make wise decisions about which technologies we want to accelerate, which technologies we want to hold back. The history of nuclear weapons is actually very instructive in this regard. The equivalent of the atomic bomb is now hiding in genomics and biology.
If we don't create a framework of rules and regulations and social contracts, it's going to go wild. Right now we have a law that says you can build a nuclear power plant to create energy, you cannot make a bomb. Imagine if we didn't have this nuclear non-proliferation treaty, right? We'd probably be dead.
We need increasingly to have conversations as communities and as societies. You can't just let the technology go heading off on its own and then hope for the best.
Our focus, I think, should be to make sure that we do our homework for the benefit of all of humanity, rather than just to sort of increase some particular corporation's profit line or even some particular nation's relative military strength and dominance. It should be done for the benefit of all.
Despite all the warnings of danger, there is a rush in the construction of the hypermachine. It is paradoxical that humanity's most incredible creation is an accelerator for its own extinction. Knowing that the outcome can be catastrophic and that we can still stop the wheels in motion, why don't we do it now? Is this a risk worth taking?
Le risque zéro est un facteur qui empêche la conquête. Les hommes, je crois, transforment le monde avant de s'interroger sur les conséquences sur le long terme. Et c'est peut-être une bonne chose, finalement, parce que sinon, on ne ferait jamais rien. Peut-être que cette inconscience est nécessaire pour qu'il y ait un futur différent.
Humans are a very peculiar species. We're desperately lonely. We want companionship. We want things besides humans. We think we're afraid of this idea of super intelligent machines, but we're busy trying to build them just as fast as we can.
I see it more as a portal, really, that humanity will have to pass through, and there will be risks associated with this passage. We might sort of smash into the wall instead of getting through, but ultimately, all the plausible paths to unlocking the great potential for a long-term future for Earth-originating intelligent life, I think, goes through this transition to the machine intelligence era.
Houston, we've got 103 by 89.5. Roger, power 9, copy.
Fido says go.
9, you are go in the orbit. Roger.
For hundreds of thousands of years, the human species has been able to create an advantage over other species, following its impulses and an eagerness to want ever more, even the power of God. We left the caves, we invented the wheel, steam locomotion, electricity, the internet. We built cars, planes, rockets. We launched ourselves into space. We created markets, medicine, we recreated life, always with absolute and permanent dissatisfaction. Why do humans have this unquenchable thirst?
On peut se poser la question, cette dynamique du futur, de l'invention du futur, elle implique une humanité toujours insatisfaite, toujours en quête de quelque chose d'autre. À quoi cela tient-il? Je pense que c'est le destin d'Homo sapiens.
Procura incessante, é muito engraçado. O consumo, não é? É porque somos filhos dos tipos que consumiam, os outros morreram. Nós somos a espécie mais predadora que há.
Depuis toujours, l'homme a été un rapace pour l'homme, parce que l'homme est gouverné par ses appétits, par son égoïsme et par ses ambitions mercantiles. Il veut l'argent, l'argent, l'argent.
Mas eu acho que somos assim porque fomos selecionados há muitas dezenas de milhares de anos. A gente separa-se dos primatas não humanos há 6 milhões. Depois a gente começou a ter cérebro e começámos a ganhar vantagens porque comíamos proteína, porque descobrimos o fogo. E depois só aqueles que eram muito eficientes é que sobreviveram. Porque nós somos uma espécie predadora. O altruísmo é uma estupidez. Porque é que eu hei de dar assim meio frango se posso comer o frango sozinho? Portanto, foi preciso a gente introduzir muitas coisas religiosas e sociais para dominar um bocadinho esta nossa sede.
We are subjects of desire, and we are pleasure machines. And pleasure has been one of the great driving forces in human evolution. So we long, we aspire, we dream. We are, we humans, the clever animal, as Nietzsche calls it, we are made of dreams. Modernity has been a dream of perfection and progress through science and technology.
Parece-me que é parte da natureza humana estar sempre num ciclo de invenção. Penso que nada para a mente humana. Acho que, no fundo, o nosso cérebro tem esta capacidade fantástica de invenção, de criação. E, portanto, as pessoas estão sempre à busca de outras coisas novas e sempre este fascínio para o que é novo e não se pode parar.
Human beings possess a drive and creative energy, but also a brutish force that generates violence. The desire for dominance has always been associated with the evolution of the human species. Birth is itself a violent act. We colonize the planet by force and violence. We use religion as a weapon. Great inventions are born, for the most part, to dominate the enemy. What is the desire to annihilate our neighbor, which does not seem to have evolved since the origin of Homo sapiens, despite the average IQ increasing every decade? Will we be able to abandon the predatory instinct and ascend to the next civilizational level?
Um amigo meu que é bispo e que é um tipo extraordinário, uma vez disse-me: porquê é que nós somos tão maus? Eu disse: ó, Sr. Bispo, nós somos filhos dos assassinos, os outros já morreram. Nós, espécie humana, nós somos filhos dos tipos que venceram tudo e todos. As pessoas têm que perceber que nós, que hoje em dia somos os tais 8 vezes mais do que a massa de todos os vertebrados, há dezenas de milhares de anos, éramos meia dúzia de gatos pingados a fugir dos leões e dos animais ferozes. E só sobreviveram aqueles que eram extraordinários em muitas coisas, mas também nesta vontade. A nossa espécie foi moldada claramente por esta nossa origem predadora sobre as outras espécies.
Uma pessoa deve, de facto, interrogar-se o que é que se está a passar, porque é que as pessoas, periodicamente, apesar de todo o progresso, se esquecem de todos os valores dos enlightenments, os valores das luzes, e regressam a momentos de extraordinária violência e de extraordinária criminalidade.
One of my favorite thinkers is Friedrich Nietzsche, and he proves conclusively that we learn nothing from history, that history is a set of repetitions, and to imagine that we actually learn to avoid the mistakes of the past is quite simply, it's lovely, but it is false. We are condemned to repeat our history. Where a bit of critical thinking helps is that we should be able to read the signs. We should be able to recognize the patterns and say, we've done this before.
Pourquoi la guerre? C'est peut-être aussi la chose qu'on devra essayer de comprendre, c'est pourquoi on se fait encore la guerre aujourd'hui comme au Moyen-Âge, pourquoi aujourd'hui on est capable, mon pays, qui est le pays des droits de l'homme, qui est avec toutes ces années d'intelligence, mon pays est aussi le 3e vendeur d'armes au monde. Quand est-ce qu'on va arriver à comprendre qu'on ne peut pas en même temps vouloir la paix et fabriquer des armes? Ça ne va pas ensemble. Ça va pas ensemble.
Well, most people look at the war that happens between two countries, and most people define that as a war. However, that's not the only war that's going on. There is also a war between people, not between countries, but between people. And the birth to these two other kind of wars, the wars between countries and the wars between people, really has its beginning from the war that happens inside of a human being. You have to realize that inside of us is good and inside of us is bad. Inside of us is darkness and inside of us is light. Inside of us is peace and inside of us is war. So we start putting out, or we try through our definitions, to try to stop the war of the countries. But then we fail to stop the war of the people. And if we succeed even in stopping the war of the people, we fail to stop the war of the person within them. And that war will keep coming back again and again and again.
Cada de nós tem dentro de si uma enorme capacidade de violência, uma enorme capacidade de destruição, não só em relação a si próprio, como em relação aos outros. É uma coisa que, muito curiosamente, tem sido assinalada periodicamente por diversos grandes pensadores. Freud fala muito criticamente desta capacidade de autodestruição e de destruição do outro. Cada de nós tem dentro de si e como é difícil, mas possível, manter essa capacidade escondida e tentar que não se manifeste.
There was a small encampment of this tribe, and the tribe had a leader. And one day a little child from that tribe came to the chief and said, "Chief, I have a question for you." And the chief said, "What?" And he said, "I see sometimes that people are good. And the same people who are good, I see sometimes that they are bad. How can this be?" So the chief said, "Because you have two wolves in you, a good wolf and a bad wolf, and they both fight." So the boy thought about it and thought about it. He said to the chief, he said, "Chief, which wolf wins?" And the chief said, "The one you feed."
A única forma como temos de cortar o aspecto mais negativo para podermos viver em sociedade e podermos viver de uma forma verdadeiramente cooperativa e uma forma que nos avance para o futuro é através de um aumento de conhecimento que dê a força, que dê a capacidade de dizer não àquilo que são os piores impulsos.
Si tu marches dans la rue et que quelqu'un tombe devant toi, tu vas aller le ramasser. Et on est peut-être la seule espèce animale à faire ça. Et en même temps, on est capable de la pire violence. Et je crois que l'humanité doit prendre conscience de ça. Comprendre qu'il n'y a pas d'un côté les gens gentils, de l'autre côté les gens méchants. On est tous ces personnes-là.
Part of what's made human society so exciting is that we are intrinsically unstable. It's a safe bet that the path from now to 2077 is going to be a mixture of both of those things. There are going to be some amazing wonders and some horrors that we cannot possibly imagine.
We want betterment. And fortunately, and this is fortunately, that those answers are inside of us. That we are the bearer of the questions and we are the bearer of the answers.
Muitos dos deuses moralizadores que ocorrem na história da humanidade, esses deuses moralizadores aparecem, por um lado, associados ao controle da agressividade e ao controle das populações que deixaram de ser populações pequeninas, que tinham pequenos deuses e passaram a ter grandes deuses. São bons porque dão uma certa organização social e tornam, por exemplo, o homicídio uma coisa reprovável, etc.
Some people suggest, because there's a negative side to religion sometimes, that the world would be better without. So if you rid religion from the world, that doesn't mean that we would have no atrocities. And so a world without religion would miss all of the positive attributes of religion. So there's a great importance for faith to be real and emphasize the one golden rule that all religions share, to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And with that principle, the good of religion can dominate. So I think in 2077, we'll see many people who are still putting that phrase of loving people to practice. The religious ideals and the motivation of people is going to be continuing through the decades.
That's the challenge facing us in this age of abundance. We're surrounded by marvels. There are more technological marvels to come. We're surrounded by abundance. And what we have to do is learn to feed each other. So the single most important factor determining whether 2077 is a new heaven or a new hell is in the attitudes of human beings towards each other. We need to pay attention to the moral dimension. We need to understand compassion. But if we lose sight of that, it will not be a century any of us want to live in.
L'homme est de plus en plus puissant par ses outils technologiques, mais l'âme, la conscience, elle, n'a pas progressé. Alors, il faudrait, face à cette surpuissance techno-scientifique, un supplément de conscience ou un supplément d'âme, comme disait Bergson. Moi, je pense que face aux défis du futur, c'est l'investissement dans le savoir, dans l'éducation, qui est la seule voie raisonnable.
Não vamos ter operações no cérebro, nem vamos ter medicamentos que possam cancelar essa enorme violência que nós temos, mas temos a possibilidade de educar, temos a possibilidade de dar aos seres humanos uma capacidade de razão, uma capacidade de análise, uma capacidade de reflexão que lhes possam permitir ser melhores, lhes possa permitir serem mais generosos, lhes possa permitir compreender os outros.
Alors l'éducation sera la chose la plus importante qu'il faut protéger et consolider. Parce que sans éducation, on aura la barbarie à nos portes. L'éducation, c'est ce qui va nous sauver. L'éducation et la poésie.
There is a kind of consensus in Europe today that the humanities are sort of a hobby, that the real science is elsewhere. Well, if you want to deal with the future, you're going to be needing literature. You're going to be needing art history. You're going to be needing history. You're going to be needing philosophy. You're going to be needing philology and linguistics.
Não são só os factos da ciência ou da tecnologia que trazem o progresso. É também essa compreensão daquilo que é o ser humano. E essa compreensão vem-nos das artes e das humanidades.
We can't just repeat. We have to invent new scenarios. We need to dream up new ways of becoming post-human together. And that is a social project. We need the artists for it. We need the writers. We need the politicians, the policymakers. We have a political system that is antiquated in relation to how we live and work today. So it's this, for me, evolution is a praxis, a daily effort to construct the future. Without the humanities, there is no possible future because there is no connection to the great legacies of our past, our languages, our forms of communication, our symbolic systems, our religious and other values.
Creativity and education will remain an asset in this journey towards the metamorphosis of the new post-human being. In 6 decades, the development of telepathic capacities and instant access to any information will lead to a transformation of learning methods. The favored path will be that of creativity and critical thinking. New artistic forms will arise as a result of the blend and integration of various mediums and dissemination methods.
Vous savez, la littérature, l'art, il accompagne la vie. Et dans l'avenir, je crois beaucoup qu'il va y avoir, sur le plan des arts plastiques, des choses de plus en plus étonnantes, de plus en plus délirantes.
E aí há qualquer coisa de extraordinariamente interessante num estudo que estamos a fazer no nosso instituto em Los Angeles. Estamos a ver qual é a influência do treino musical regular no desenvolvimento do comportamento humano e no desenvolvimento do cérebro humano. Ao fim do 3º ano deste estudo, aquilo que verificamos é que não só o comportamento das crianças muda extraordinariamente e muda para melhor, no sentido em que há uma maior disciplina, um maior respeito pelos outros, que tem muito a ver com o facto destas crianças estarem a ser treinadas em música num setting de orquestra, mas acontece também que o cérebro desenvolve-se mais rapidamente.
A arte é vital para mim. Põe-me em contacto com o mais íntimo do meu ser, com o meu passado, com o presente e com o futuro. Faz-me viajar no tempo e no espaço. Sou pintora, escultora, música, bailarina. Tudo isto numa só arte.
We have different types of humans with different capacities, different bodies, different mental abilities. Is this not our great chance to put diversity and difference at the center of our evolutionary program and not a selective kind of eugenics program where we all have to be in the model of the brave new world?
É perfeitamente possível perder certas capacidades. Se uma pessoa, por exemplo, calcula números todos os dias com o auxílio de um computador, em vez de fazer a matemática dentro da sua própria cabeça, é claro que vai haver perdas. A grande dúvida é aquilo que é essencial daquilo que não é essencial.
We know from teaching that there are new pathologies at work. Dyslexia is up and running. There is a problem with attention deficit, particularly in the teenager population. Boys suffer from it much more than girls. We have a collapse of boys' performance at school. In my days, the gender gap in education was the poor performance of the women. Today, the gender gap in education is the poor performance of the boys. They're not adapting. There is a collapse of handwriting. I think in the south of Europe, we still train students to write cursively. In countries like the Netherlands, in the north of Europe, they don't have to write. They can print now. In fact, they can type immediately. And there's a lot of discussion about what kind of brains you get if you don't get trained to actually write as you breathe. That hand-eye breath coordination is shifting. But all of this is very much work in progress. And I think we need another generation or so to see what the changes are and to assess how we as teachers can translate the old culture back into this new world.
Os robôs são o meu braço direito. São eles que tratam da logística e das tarefas domésticas. Quando era criança, vivia com os meus pais no 7º andar. Subia e descia o elevador em média 4 vezes por dia, o que ao fim de 10 anos significava um mês de férias. Hoje vivo num 106º piso e bastam apenas alguns segundos para chegar a casa. Ganhei tempo. Ganhámos tempo. O tempo que ganhei dedico à comunidade do meu prédio. Todos os dias passo 1 hora a cuidar dos jardins verticais. É uma obrigação, mas também um prazer.
Throughout history, humans have done everything to seize time from time. Perhaps because we are ephemeral, time has become an obsession. When life is facilitated by a diversity of robots and ubiquitous software, when we are able to detect our illnesses precociously and be healthy until the age of 110, when our looks remain unchanged after we are 30, when we can have children at any age, will we be happier?
Why are we so enthralled with this technology? Why? This is an incredibly good question. Because we want our lives to become easier. We want more time to ourselves. We want more time to enjoy ourselves. But we never ask the question. It's almost like we're so engrossed in the technology that we don't pull back and ask that simple question. Is it making my life easier? Am I more happy now? Am I having more fun? Is it really giving me more time for fun? The fundamental questions that we should ask, we're not asking anymore.
Est-ce que plus de maîtrise des forces matérielles apportera plus de satisfaction aux êtres humains? J'en suis pas sûr. Je crois qu'on ne peut pas dire pour l'avenir si on sera plus heureux ou moins heureux. Nous pouvons penser qu'avec le développement des sciences, des techniques, etc., nous pouvons faire reculer un certain nombre de grands malheurs. Mais moins de malheurs, de grands malheurs, ne veut pas dire être plus heureux. Le bonheur, ce n'est pas une chose que l'on maîtrise.
There is a quest in every human being to be fulfilled. Every seed that lies in waiting for the sun to be able to fall upon it will wait a really long time. And when that tree that is blocking the sun falls over, the sunshine will come and it will be an opportunity for that sapling that has been waiting to grow. Nobody has to teach the seed that this is what you are waiting for. Nobody has to come along and explain to the seed, have patience. It has patience. And so we are here to be fulfilled. And this is the reason, even though one day we will be gone. But what we can take with us is a filled cup, a cup that is our heart, that is us.
We may wonder what the reason is for this ephemeral existence in an immensity of space and time. We do not know whether there are or have been intelligent life forms more advanced than us in this or other galaxies. The truth is that in 13.9 billion years of the universe and 4.5 billion years of the Earth, there is a perfect conjugation that allows our existence here and now, perfect but vulnerable.
Whatever directions we go and whatever technologies we develop, I just really hope that we continue to remember who we are, our humble beginnings, and that we are vulnerable. That there is birth and there is death and there is this life. And this life is the most precious thing we have.
We may have lost the ability to enjoy the here and now 2 or 3 million years ago, when humans evolved into a species capable of projecting the future. Science has not yet been able to explain how we came by this ability, but since we have it, perhaps we should ask ourselves what are the advantages it provides in the conception of tomorrow.
Tu sais, l'autre jour, j'étais dans une école et les enfants me disent « Mais monsieur Artus Bertrand, c'est quand la fin du monde ?» Je dis « Mais c'est terrible ce que vous dites là. » Et j'ai demandé aux enfants quels sont les enfants, il y avait 400 élèves, quels sont les enfants environ qui croyaient à la fin du monde. Eh bien, près de 60% des bras se sont levés. C'est-à-dire que les jeunes aujourd'hui savent qu'on va vers un monde difficile et compliqué.
There's a story we tell at Long Now that I think is instructive about the right posture to have towards the future. And it involves New College at Oxford, founded in the 1300s. And their main hall was a great hall, you know, with high ceilings and these vast oak beams. And they noticed there was more than the usual amount of dust coming down. They sent a building surveyor up to inspect the ceiling, and he came back and he said, well, those oak beams up there are dry rot. They need to be replaced. And they thought, my God, those things are hundreds of years old, and there are no oak trees like that anymore. How will we ever replace those beams? Well, as they were discussing it, word eventually made it out to the college forester who managed the college lands. And he came in and he said to the master of the house, said, well, actually, your oaks are ready. He said, what do you mean my oaks? He said, well, way back when this building was built, my predecessor's 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 predecessor had a conversation with your predecessor's 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 predecessor, and they both knew that oak eventually dry rots and those beams would have to be replaced. And so my predecessor's 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 predecessor planted a forest of oak trees. And each college forester said to his successor, don't touch them oaks. They's needed to replace the beams in the Great Hall. Well, your oaks are ready. The lesson for that, for all of us, is what can I do today to make the world in 2077 a better place? In short, we should all take a little bit of time while we're going about our daily lives to make sure we also plant some acorns that will grow into vast oak trees that we will never sit under, but our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren and our great-great-grandchildren will, and they will thank us for it.
The challenges and threats that humanity faces in the coming decades leave open what the future will be in 60 years from now. What legacy do we leave our children, and what do we do today so that the future is a place where they have a right to live?
I am working very hard to encourage alternative scenarios for the future. I think we are short of ideas about the future. There's a lot of talk and planning, really, but our system is very short-term planning. Politically, economically, it's really the next 5 minutes. And an overall scenario for where we are going, I think, would require a lot more work than we're doing. And again, I want to return to the role of the university, because I thought always that the university was a think tank that should contribute to making future scenarios possible.
We all have a role. I think the first thing we have to do, we realize that we all have a role as individuals, but we all have roles in society as well. And so we have to, first of all, we have to get involved in politics. We have to vote, and we have to make our voices heard. But it can be at a local level. It can be at the local of your village or your council or something. It doesn't have to be the national government all the time.
C'est nous qui pouvons changer le monde, c'est pas les hommes politiques. Il n'y a pas de lobby qui nous oblige à acheter ça. Non, c'est pas vrai. C'est nous qui décidons.
É fascinante pensar como os humanos são, no fundo, criadores do futuro e não só espectadores do futuro.
We are the ones. We cannot blindly follow things anymore because we think that the governments are going to save us. We have to save ourselves. We are the angel that has come that can save ourselves, period.
We can only get to anything like 2077 if we work together to make it happen. So 2077 is right here and right now.
Over the next 6 decades, we will have 3 billion people more and unprecedented global threats. Warming and global estrangement. Mass migration, resource scarcity and dispute. War and state failure. It is worth asking the same question that Scrooge asked the ghost of Christmas future. Are these the shadows of the things that will be, or the things that may be? What is at stake is all or nothing, an amazing technological revolution, or the collapse. Depend on us.
O Benjamin nasceu saudável e inteligente, e com a cor de olhos que escolhemos. Ele ainda não sabe, mas o mundo que o espera é um lugar admirável, com paz, prosperidade e ar limpo. Se pudéssemos voltar atrás 60 anos, o que poderíamos ter feito para ter um futuro assim?
Y ahora, señoras y señores, un gran aplauso para la joya de la creación, los seres humanos.